All right, welcome back. Once again, this is Fundamentals of Philosophy. I am your instructor, John Taylor. And on this module, we are going to be talking about epistemology. This is Module 3, Part 3 of the Kahn text, the textbook by Kahn, on epistemology, or the theory of knowledge. And it's going to be a little different on this one. I'm going to do a couple of videos because we have a lot of readings to do for this section. This is probably the heaviest section of the course, the heaviest module. It's got something like 17 readings. They're short readings, but there's a lot of them. And you're not going to need to memorize everything that's in those readings or everything that's going to be in these these lectures. These are here to help contextualize and to help you along with the stuff, but look out for the focus topics that I send out as well. That's going to tell you what to focus on, which ones to pay the closest attention to. It's a lot of material, and you're not expected to master all of it by the end of this term. So hopefully it's not going to be too onerous, and it's going to be some exciting stuff. We're dealing with some cool stuff this time. So let's jump right into it. Module 3, Epistemology. So we've established a few preliminaries. We've seen the value of philosophy to expand minds and challenge dogmas. We've witnessed the power of logical deduction and scientific discovery. And in this module, we're going to jump into the thick of one of the oldest and most central problems of philosophy. What is true knowledge, and how is it acquired? This week, we will explore the history of epistemology. And we're going to start with Plato, because of course we are. Epistemology, the study of knowledge, its nature, sources, and limits, has its roots, not surprisingly, in the philosophy of Plato, who set out the distinction between true knowledge, episteme, and opinion, doxa. In the Meno, Plato has Socrates represent his theory of knowledge as recollection. Socrates interrogates one of Meno's slaves and appears to draw from him knowledge of geometric proofs through the process of recollection alone. Through this demonstration, Plato provides an early example of the theory of innate ideas, the notion that our minds arrive with true knowledge already pre-installed. It's our job as philosophers to wield the tools of pure reason in order to discover, or in this case rediscover, this innate knowledge. Plato's belief in the soul's pre-existence and its passage through cycles of reincarnation underpins this theory. The soul, having encountered ultimate truths in previous lives, carries those truths already within it. This theory allows Plato to extricate Socrates from the trap of Meno's paradox. And if you've read it, the dialogue is between Plato and Meno. Those are or between Socrates and Meno. Those are your characters. So Meno tries to trap Socrates with this paradox. How can one search for something when one does not know what it is? If you already know what it is, then there's no need to search for it. It's unnecessary. And if you don't know it, then how are you going to know it when you found it? How are you going to recognize it when you find it, if you don't know what it is? Plato resolves this by proposing that the soul already recalls truths it has always known, rather than discovering them for the first time. So it's not something that's taught, it's not something that's learned in the world. These ultimate truths are already pre-existing. They're innate ideas that we are born with. They come pre-installed in your mind. They're the Windows operating system that is preloaded on your mind when your mind emerges in the world. Crucially, Plato's theory of recollection removes the acquisition of knowledge from the realm of experience. And this is going to be the big split between the rationalists and the empiricists. The truth is already there in our minds, according to the rationalists. And Plato was one of the first examples of a rationalist. The truth is already there in our minds. We just have to reason correctly to arrive at it. The history of philosophy is often told as if it were this history of conflict, right? There's always two schools that are opposing each other. In this case, it's going to be the rationalists on one side and the empiricists on the other. The rationalists believe that we acquire knowledge through applying pure reason. We have innate ideas, and we discover them through the application of pure reason. The empiricists, on the contrary, believe that we acquire knowledge through experience in the world, that we gain our knowledge, our true knowledge of the world, by actually going out and doing things, by actually encountering objects in the world and getting ideas that way and then building knowledge out of them. So this is going to be the big split. This sort of defines the early modern period of philosophy. The central point of dispute is the question of the source of true knowledge. Rationalism holds that true knowledge originates Rationalism holds that true knowledge originates from reason and innate ideas, independent of sensory experience. Empiricism, on the other hand, asserts that knowledge arises from sensory experience and observations of the physical world. That's the difference. And notice this maps on to deduction and induction. The rationalist position, it's deductive. You can find out the truth through deductions, certain absolute truths. It's a priori. You don't have to go out and do experiments in the world. It's all prior to experience. Empiricists believe it's all a posteriori, it's all inductive. We have to go out and test our theories. They are the early scientists who believe that you actually have to do tests, do hypothesis testing in the world to find truth. The classic image of this dispute is depicted in Raphael's fresco, The School of Athens, which depicts Plato and Aristotle walking through the city of Athens. They're walking next to each other, they're talking, and in the painting, Plato is pointing his finger up towards the realm of the idea forms, representing rationalism's focus on eternal truths accessible through reason. They're up here, they're in the forms. In contrast, Aristotle is gesturing downwards. He's got his hand out and his palm facing down. He's gesturing down towards the ground, emphasizing the empirical approach grounded in sensory experience and observation. The battle between rationalism and empiricism emerges in its fully modern form 2 millennia later. Excuse me. During what's known as the early modern period, roughly from 1500 to 1800 CE or Common Era. In the rationalist corner, we have figures such as René Descartes, Gottfried Leibniz, and Baruch Spinoza. We are mostly not going to be talking about those last two. For this purpose of this course, we're going to be talking about Descartes. He's going to be our standard bearer for rationalism because this is already overstuffed. We got enough material to get through without trying to do Spinoza. Spinoza's great. So is Leibniz. Monads and pantheism, good stuff, but we don't have the space for it, unfortunately. In the empiricist corner, we have the trio often erroneously referred to as the British empiricists. Only one of them was actually British. John Locke, he's the Brit. He was the British one. George Berkeley, who was actually Irish, and David Hume, who was actually Scottish. And after these disputants, the empiricists and the rationalists have stated their cases, we're going to get the referee out. We're going to bring in the German philosopher Immanuel Kant, who's going to enter the arena and attempt to reconcile the two positions. And as philosophers do, in doing so, he is going to create an even bigger problem that philosophy has been trying to resolve ever since. So, excuse me, let's get to it. Let's get to Descartes, because he's going to be our rationalist. He's going to be the guy. The French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist René Descartes is probably the individual most closely associated with, or depending on who you ask, blamed for, the rationalist approach to epistemology. The context, the text by con, not context and context. Anyway, the context splits Descartes' work across multiple chapters in a way that's honestly not very intuitive, or doesn't map very well on the structure of this course or the objectives of this course. So in this lecture, I'm going to try to weave the crucial points together into something like a coherent narrative that's spread out across a bunch of chapters. And this will actually make some stuff in the next module easier, hopefully. So, the context, which is not to say the text by con, but the context, the situation behind Descartes' masterwork, the Meditations on First Philosophy, needs to be understood against the backdrop of two pretty significant developments of Descartes' time. The first was the fallout from the Italian physicist Galileo Galilei, guy you might have heard of, who defended heliocentrism, the radical notion at the time, really a radical notion, that the Earth revolves around the Sun rather than the Sun revolving around the Earth, which was what Aristotle thought, and that's what the Catholic Church thought for a long time, because they were following the Christianization of Aristotle's philosophy through Rome, etc., etc. That's a whole story. That could be a whole different lecture. But the position, Galileo's position, set him in opposition to the official doctrines of the Catholic Church. That's the important bit. They had a lot of power back then. And as a result, he was persecuted for his heterodoxy, which is when you fail to follow orthodoxy, you are then guilty of heterodoxy. Descartes was a skilled scientist, and he was well known for his mechanistic theory of nature, which describes the functioning of the world in terms of matter and motion, kind of like a big machine. Turns out the church didn't like that too much either. Kind of rubs up against their whole idea of the immortality of the soul if everything's just a big machine, a big automaton. So Descartes was kind of worried about that. He was worried, he saw what happened to Galileo, and you may have noticed that there is a trend throughout this course so far of a lot of thinkers having some good ideas and as a result facing some persecution from the authorities of their time. If you believe that doesn't happen now, I would probably disagree with you about that. But it is a trend, it's a pattern. Descartes wanted to avoid it, and he mostly did. So part of his inspiration was that he wanted to justify his mechanistic philosophy. He wanted to show that it could be reconciled with faith. The faith and reason could be reconciled. That his naturalistic mechanistic philosophy could be served, could coexist with the church doctrine of the immortality of the soul. Second, there was this revival of skepticism during Descartes' time, and we're not going to get really into that. A guy named Montaigne was a big figure in that, and it was a particular type of skepticism called Pyrrhonic skepticism. Excuse me. So Descartes was worried about this because he was worried that it could undermine the foundations for science. So he wanted to thread the needle on this. He wanted to navigate the tensions both on the side of religion and on the side of philosophy by demonstrating that scientific understanding of the natural world could coexist with the doctrine of the soul's immortality. This desire to reconcile both faith and reason set the stage for his search for a foundation of absolute certainty immune to both dogma and skepticism. Descartes' method was to turn the skeptics' arguments against them. He would establish a foundation of absolute certainty by doubting absolutely everything. The method Descartes devised was one of systematic and methodological doubt. Reasoning that one ought not to believe anything about which one can have even the slightest uncertainty, Descartes undertakes a series of thought experiments intended to throw all possible beliefs into question, and thus push skepticism to its absolute extreme. Using himself as an example, which was kind of a novelty for how to do philosophy at the time. There was a lot of things Descartes was doing that were new, that he was sort of a pioneer about. Using himself as an example, Descartes argues that only ideas which are clear and distinct can be trusted to be true. So what are clear and distinct ideas? Descartes defines a clear idea as one that is immediately and vividly present to the mind, like a bright light illuminating its subject. A distinct idea, on the other hand, is one that stands apart, sharply separated from any other idea, ensuring that there is no confusion or overlap. This is the criterion, clear and distinct. That's what he's looking for. This is the criteria that Descartes will use to test the trustworthiness of his beliefs. And he's going to subject them as a whole. He's not going to go belief by belief by belief by belief. That's too many beliefs. You can't do it. So he's going to go with large, broad-grained categories of belief. First, he's going to talk about his everyday, ordinary, daily sense experiences, just your experience of the world. And he's going to talk about what he's going to use to talk about this is his famous dream argument. And it's something that we're all familiar with. Descartes, he's sitting there, he's writing his meditations, and he points out, I could be dreaming this. I could be dreaming that I'm sitting here in my dressing gown by the fire, which is apparently how Descartes spent a good portion of his life. In his dressing gown by the fire, writing his philosophy. It could all be a dream. He's had many dreams like that because that's all he does, so that's what he dreams about. He's dreamt many things that he thought were true until he woke up and realized that no, it was in fact a dream. And there isn't really a clear way of distinguishing that, according to Descartes. When you're dreaming, you're pretty sure that what you're experiencing, unless you're a lucid dreamer, you're pretty sure that what you're experiencing is real life. And that to him throws the evidence of the senses into doubt, because we don't have a clear criterion, a clear and distinct criterion for distinguishing between when we're dreaming and when we're awake. The sense experiences seem to be identical. So, since in dreams, he can also imagine things, all manner of things. You can dream about all sorts of stuff, mythological creatures, things that don't exist. So, he concludes that there is no absolute certainty that can be, he could be dreaming, and he could be dreaming about things that aren't even real. He doesn't have to be just dreaming about real things in the world. He could be inventing entirely new categories of things to dream about. So that's not gonna do it for him. That sensory experience, that sensory account of the world for him is dubitable. It's not gonna work as a foundation for absolute certainty. So toss it out. That's gone. Next, Descartes turns his attention to mathematical truths. So these would seem on the surface to be a lot more reliable, right? Than sensory experiences. I mean, 2 + 2 = 4. Whether you're dreaming or not, 2 + 2 = 4. But Descartes' still not satisfied. He's that kind of guy. He proposes a further thought experiment. So what if an evil demon, possessing of immense power and cunning, is deliberately deceiving him about even the most fundamental truths of mathematics? The demon apparently has a lot of free time, and all it does is make Descartes believe that he's wrong about math. That's the demon's job, and it's basically Descartes trying not to say that God is tricking him. But that's really what he's saying, is that it's possible that God could trick him, that this could all be an illusion, something with immense power that is godlike. He doesn't want to get on the wrong side of the church by suggesting that God is a deceiver, so he invents the evil demon. But we are supposed to assume that the evil demon basically has the same powers that God would have in this situation to put even deductive reasoning at risk, to make that also dubitable. It could be that some incredibly powerful being makes us think that 2 + 2 = 4, when in fact 2 + 2 = banana or something. So notice what he's done here. He's gotten rid of induction and deduction. He has tossed out sensory experience. He's tossed out a posteriori evidence from experience, from testing, from the world in his dream argument, and then he turns to the evil demon argument to toss out deductive reasoning, mathematical proofs, and a priori reasoning. Both of them are gone. So what's left? Having systematically dismantled the foundations of both sensory experience and mathematical reasoning, Descartes finds himself left with a single, undeniable truth. Even if every belief he holds is subject to doubt, the very act of doubting presupposes the existence of something that doubts. This realization becomes the cornerstone of his philosophy. If he is being deceived, there has to exist a self that can be deceived. That's the ground upon which Cartesian philosophy is built. Descartes knows with absolute certainty that one belief is necessarily true. I am, I exist. If he is able to be deceived, then he must exist. From this, Descartes derives his famous maxim, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. He doesn't actually write that in the Meditations. That comes from a different work. But you've probably encountered that at some point. You've probably heard it. It's very famous. I think, therefore I am. If he's able to be deceived, he must exist. But what sort of thing is this cogito? And the cogito is the I think, right? The ergo sum is the therefore I am. The cogito is the self in Descartes' lingo. So when he talks about the cogito, he is talking about the self. He is talking about the mind. What sort of thing is the cogito? It's clearly not the same thing as the body, right? We know of bodies and other physical objects through our senses, which we have already demonstrated can be doubted in the dream argument. Once all dubious qualities are stripped away, once we've gotten rid of everything that we can doubt, we seem left with only this. He is a thinking thing. All we are left with, the one certain truth that Descartes is left with after he stripped everything else away, is that he is a thinking thing. He is a thing that thinks. And the Latin for this is res cogitans. Res is thing. Cogitans is thinking. He is a thinking thing. That's it. That's what remains. that is his ground of absolute certainty upon which he will rebuild the world. And this leads him to the next question. Well, if mind is defined as a thinking substance, and we'll talk more about what substances are in a minute, if mind is a thinking substance, what can we say about the nature of physical objects? And this is Descartes' famous wax thought experiment. His famous wax argument. Descartes introduces the example of a piece of wax, right? Which is meant to illustrate the difference between knowledge derived from sensory experience and knowledge obtained through reasoning. A piece of wax has certain properties. It has shape, solidity, and so on. You've encountered wax. You have a candle somewhere that you know about. But place it near a flame, and those properties change, right? Wax can melt. Wax gets melty. You put it near a fire, and it loses its shape. It becomes fluid rather than solid. You heat it up, and it changes. So these properties that we sense about the wax, they're changeable. They can be one way at one moment and a different way at another moment. But we understand that it's the same wax, right? It's the same wax that melted. It's the same wax as it was before it melted. It hasn't become something else. It's, someone didn't steal our original piece of wax and sneak in and replace. Maybe the evil demon did. But typically we understand that it's the same piece of wax. But how do we understand this? We don't understand it through the sensory experience, according to Descartes, because we have already seen that the sensory properties of the wax have changed from time A to time B, from when it was unmelted to when it was melted. All those properties are different. We seem to be arriving at this conclusion through reasoning. We're reasoning about it. And reason tells us, even though the appearances have changed, the wax remains the same material body because it maintains its extension in space. An extension is a sort of technical term, but it also is sort of self-explanatory. Physical things are extended in space. They take up space. They are literally extended. And that is how Descartes wants us to think about physical objects. And this is how he splits up the world into two substances. We have the thinking thing, the res cogitans, on one side. And we have extended things, bodies, physical objects, things that have the extension, that take up volume in the world, that take up space. The mind doesn't. The mind is just a thinking thing. It's not physically instantiated. It's not made of matter. It doesn't take up space. It's not extended. Extension is a property that belongs only to physical objects. And Descartes' term for this is, again, the Latin. It's res extensa, which extensa is extended and res is thing, so extended thing. And thus, Descartes splits the world into two clear and distinct categories: the physical world of extended matter and the mental world of non-extended thinking mind. Thought and extension represent the two fundamental substances underlying all of Cartesian metaphysics. And this will be particularly important when we get to the next chapter and talk about the philosophy of mind. A substance, or that bit about the difference between mind and body and how they're two separate substances. And what is a substance? What do we mean when we use that word? A substance in philosophy, a substance in philosophy is the unchanging essence of a thing. This goes back to Aristotle, but Descartes doing kind of something different with it. A substance is what endures through time, even though its properties or qualities might change. So the properties of the wax change, but its underlying substance remains the same thing. Its essence is consistent and persists through time, though its accidental properties, such as its shape, its texture, its taste, its smell, those might change. The resulting position has become known as Cartesian or substance dualism. And again, we're going to talk a lot more about that in Module 4. And I think we're going to sort of wrap up there and move to John Locke in the next video. So to recap that, Descartes leaves us with mind and body separated out. The mind is a purely thinking thing. It has had, he is able to doubt all properties that exist except the recognition that if he is a thing that is able to be deceived, then he exists. And how does he exist? He exists as a thinking thing, as a res cogitans, as a cogito. And in contrast to this, we use our reasoning to acquire understanding of the external world, and through our reasoning, we arrive at the conclusion that it is a different substance than mind, and it is characterized by the property of being extended in space. It is the res extensa, the world of extended things. These are the two substances that comprise Cartesian or substance dualism. And a dualism is a type of metaphysics in which two types of things are said to exist. There is also philosophies that are monistic, which say that there is one thing, one type of thing that exists. Most people these days are monists. Most people are physicalists. We'll talk more about that in the next module. But that's it for Descartes, and also Plato and the Meno and rationalism. And we will talk about John Locke and empiricism in the next video.